All right, we are going to continue with our color spot illustration. Pick up where we left off. We had Monday off, so it's been a while. So we cleaned up our line art from a sketch for a free-floating spot illustration. We started adding flatting colors, and then we chose our local flat colors. And now I just started at the end of last class demonstrating how to do duotone color. And this is what's called hard edge duotone. So I'm going to open Photopea up. And because it's a new version of Google, it doesn't remember my progress, but that's okay. And what I'm going to do is open up my folder, open up assignment 5, my latest PSD, which is right here, drag it into Photopea, and we'll see what we have so far. So remember that digital coloring, this is what you need to know conceptually, even if you're terrible at it. You need to understand that digital coloring exists in a sandwich underneath vector line art. It's ideal if it's a vector line art. It's okay if it's just high resolution. But vector black line art and a white blank background. So those are our two pieces of bread. On that bread, we put between it flat colors. That's kind of the most basic thing you need. And flat color is like having cheese on your sandwich. If you don't know what colors to try, you can start with just what's called flatting, just throwing in really bright different colors into each area. And then you just swap those colors for the ones you want. So those are the flat local colors. The next step, now you're adding things to your cheese sandwich. And duotone is something we just started, which I will continue. But because we had the morning class, let me show you what we were doing in the morning class in Photoshop. Because I'm going to try to go through all the different digital coloring techniques today with you. So if I open up the PSD, where is it? Here it is. This is going to open up in Photoshop. We have that same digital coloring sandwich, just like Photopea. Black vector lines on top, white bread on the bottom, right? So we start with flat color. Well, I started with flatting, and then I replaced that with the local flat color I wanted to use. So that's the local flat color. Then look at the changes that happen. And to make it, you see them a little bit more clearly, I'm going to turn on a gray background instead of just white. So this is optional gray bread. Or you can think of it like gray poupon, right on your white bread. All right, so what can you do on top of your cheese? You can do duotone hard edge. What is duotone hard edge? It takes the local color and it separates it into lights and darks. And it's called hard edge because you actually just use your lasso and you just cut the shape you want. So I'll show you how to do that. Then you can play, it's very easy to then play with duotone soft edge, where you gradate the boundaries between the hard and soft edges. You can see how they soften and gradient, or kind of work more in gradients. And you might want a mix of both, where some places they're more gradient based, some places they're crisper and harder. Then, if you want to go further, you can do full spectrum color, which is where you do a little bit of other colors added into every part. See, without full spectrum, it's all just duotones of local color. With full spectrum, anything goes. I can have pinks in the beak and purples in the yellows and whatever. Then, that's the end of our internal sandwich, because all of that goes behind our black line art. But we don't need to finish digital coloring there. We can start putting toothpicks and olives on top of our black bread, right? And these are what are called color holds, where we put stuff on top of the black line art, even if it's subtle, like just dimming it a little bit, right? And then we can play with things like highlights that go over the black line art. And then we could do things like offsets that extend behind the black line art to help it make it look good on other backgrounds besides just white and gray. And then we could even add kind of texture overlays. So this was my finished illustration, all told. There we go. That was my finished illustration, all told. And it has this kind of texture that's a little bit like construction paper, but mostly it's using these kind of digital coloring techniques in the coloring sandwich and can work well on any background. Okay, so that's what we're doing. So, how do we do that in Photopea? Well, it's helpful to have those inspiration images, right? Things to steal color from. It might be helpful to have a tablet, though I didn't actually use one in the last class. And then how do we create duotones? I'm going to start from the beginning here, so I'll delete the one I started. You start by taking your flat local colors and duplicating it, Command J, and then renaming that duplicate into hard-edged duotone. And these hard-edged duotones are going to be the highlights. So how do I get highlights? It's pretty simple. I simply go Image Adjustment Levels, and I push the mid-tone slider to the left, about halfway. What that does is add white to all of my flat color. So now I have highlights. But how do I decide on what the duotone edge is for the shadows? Well, I'm going to start to cut out shadows. So one place I know there's going to be a shadow is underneath this wing. And I'm cutting through my colors here and then cutting back with my lasso within the ranges of the black line art, right? And then I can always use Option to subtract from my selection and Shift to add to my lasso selection. Now, I actually like to do this with a 1 pixel feather, just 1 pixel. It just makes it a little less harsh, but still very clearly hard-edged. And in animation, this is called cell shading. And then you just hit delete. And I've just cut out my first duotone shadow. Then I expect there to be a shadow maybe underneath the jaw. And underneath the helmet, something like this. Maybe even on the underside of the beak. And then you can use Shift to add to it. Remember, I'm just trying to go within the boundaries of my line art. And maybe I want to taper this a little bit differently. There we go. And then just delete. Deselect. I have my next shadow. Then maybe right here on the thigh, the inside, just using my lasso with a 1 pixel feather. And I'm thinking of kind of cartoon serial mascots, right? Which are often done with duotone hard edge. You can see that with Sugar Bear's sweater, right? Duotone hard edge. Now, if I don't like that shape, I just hit Command Z and I augment it. So I like it down here, but I want to augment it here. So with my lasso, I use Option to subtract away from it. And maybe I want to get some texture on this leg. Something like this. To show a little bit of the feather on the inside. And then I might like that shape better. And I might decide I can do that here as well. Not just mimic the wing, but give it a little bit of texture as well. To show. And you're just removing from the highlights. What about the underside of the foot? What's cool about this technique is because you've copied all of your flat colors, all you have to do for this is delete away from this lighter version of those colors. And when you do that, even across multiple different colors, it will give you duotones. So all with just one shape, I can get these duotones. Now you might decide duotone is not needed for your spot illustration, but I need you all to know about it. If I want to add to the selection, I just use Shift and then delete. Now I've got an underside of the foot. And you don't need to make your coloring all that complicated, but in demoing so that you know all the different techniques, I kind of have to make it pretty complicated to show you all the possibilities. But it always starts with flat color. That's the bare minimum. Flat local color. And those of you who have taken painting or drawing and you understand kind of light logic, how cast shadows and form shadows work, that can help you decide where to put shadows, but mostly you just want shadows where they look best, right? So on this wing, I want to give it some texture, maybe going up to the hand, into the palm. And then I might want to just give it a little bit of feather texture going into the waist, right? Then I can always add to it. Let's see. And this is the hardest step of digital coloring because you have to be so decisive about how you want to cut up these colors. But it's really pretty safe because you could always undo it because this is a copy of your flat colors. You can always just get back to flat color. Nope, don't like that. All right, so what happens if you don't want to Command Z and undo, but you want to add more of your light shapes back in? Well, then you can use the lasso again. And it's pretty simple. You're just going to use the lasso and then use your paint bucket. Select the color you want to add back in and then just drop it in. All right, so I've done most of the body. Some of it I like more than others, but it's a good start. Just going to do a little shadow there. And remember, if you want to redo it, undo it, you just use your paint bucket and fill it back in with a light color. because this is all behind your line art. So it's pretty safe.